Capcom has been on a tear over the last little while, making us brand new games and cool little experiments like Path of the Goddess. If you haven't checked that one out yet, it's very cool. They've also been doing remakes like Resident Evil 4 last year, which blew all of our minds. We've got cool games like Monster Hunter Wilds on the way, and that game looks insane. But they're also making very cool collections. They've got these fighting game collections, and the latest one, which is just hitting the market right now, is Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics, which has 7 different arcade games with Marvel superheroes dating from 1993 to the year 2000, including the seminal and the long-missed Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which really saw Capcom just increase the roster size and give us all kinds of flashy new combat capabilities in this wonderful, wonderful arcade experience. What's also really cool about this is that they've included a home version of the arcade game, The Punisher, and there was an excellent Sega Genesis version of that game back in the day, but I don't know if they've ever made The Punisher for home consoles, the arcade version. Now, all of these games are arcade games, and so you'll see, you know, you can choose to put an insert coin kind of thing into it, or you can keep all the games on free play, but they have coin-op style quirks to them. They don't have all of the menus and all of the structure that you would get in a console version. And in the options for each of these different games, you can choose different filter options. So you can have as much of the raster effect on screen as you want, and each one of the games has its own subset. So you can play one game with raster option B and one with raster option C. You can also shrink the frame size so it's in the correct original resolution. You can make everything 4:3, so there's some flexibility there. You can also change the wallpapers on each of the games, and they all correspond. All of the wallpapers correspond with each of the different titles as well. I found myself kind of defaulting to turning off any of the filters. Although some of them are really cool, I found that the image darkened on my OLED TV that I was playing this game on, and I didn't really like that. I actually liked the brighter, chonky pixels of just like nothing, no filter applied, and I thought that looked pretty good for the most part. Although Marvel vs. Capcom 2, I did decide on a specific filter. You can play around with that to your heart's content, and you can choose all of the options that you want visually, but I can tell you that these graphics from the 90s and the year 2000 are sensational. You know, this was Capcom at the top of its game with 2D fighting. You can tell that all of the developers and the artists that worked on each of these games love the source material, and they love the opportunity to work with these Marvel superheroes and incorporate them at first into Street Fighter experiences and then into the wider assortment of Capcom characters. And it's really cool, actually, the way that they laid everything out. It's fun that we get this diversion and we play as the Punisher, which is an incredibly violent experience. He's picking up not just guns and machine guns, but battle axes and baseball bats and boomerangs and knives. He's throwing everything at these guys. And of course, there's pizza and floating chickens and stuff like that that you can pick up. Such a throwback to a different type of brawler out there. Super fun though, very cool visual aesthetic to it. You can play as the Punisher and you can play as Nick Fury. And I just don't know if this would be an arcade game that could exist in 2024, you know? Like, the first image is you see Frank Castle, the Punisher, with, you know, you're looking down the gun barrel, and I think the tagline is, "If you're guilty, you're dead." I don't think that would fly right now in 2024, but that is the character. He is ruthless, and it's kind of fun playing this cartoony version of this character with all of these wacky different bad guys that you get to just demolish. And there's robots and bushwhackers in there, kingpins in there. There's lots of different cool characters. But then we start to get into the fighting games, and the fighting games are unbelievably cool, and you can see and feel Capcom flexing its creative muscle as it goes from year to year and game, and more characters keep getting introduced, and it's really freaking fun. And the first one is X-Men Children of the Atom, which is very cool. So all of these great X-Men characters, Colossus and Psylocke and Wolverine, of course, but they've unlocked Juggernaut and Magneto, and Akuma is also in this game as well, so a little hint of what is to come. And you get a real sense as you're playing through these different games that Marvel has so much depth on its bench, all of these different games. It's like they have this universe of X-Men heroes and then this universe of Avengers heroes. It's going to be wild to see the MCU just sort of pull in all of the X-Men into this because they can exist unto themselves. You know, they're just so powerful and so cool. There's so many great, visually amazing flourishes that are happening in X-Men Children of the Atom. Even though it's one of the earliest of the combo fighters that Capcom worked on, it's really fun to play it still today in 2024. We get 13 characters again in the next game, Marvel's Superheroes, where we get to extend out into the greater Marvel universe out there. So Spider-Man and the Hulk is included in this, Captain America. We also get to see Doctor Doom, and we also get some X-Men characters. Psylocke and Magneto and Juggernaut are all in this as well. This is super cool as well, although it does feel quite a bit thinner than the experiences that we are about to start having as we progress into the years. X-Men vs. Street Fighter is next on deck, and that one's from 1996. And here we see just how powerful the X-Men characters can be and how cool the Street Fighter characters are when you stack them up. And what you start to recognize with this series is that Capcom wasn't afraid to go bigger, you know, and to have these characters have just these massive special powers and special combos, and you'll see the whole screen just taken up by the madness. And you also start to feel that there's a little bit more verticality with the way that these matches go, which is, you know, playing on the strengths and the abilities of these Marvel heroes as well. So you'll see characters leave the screen, and it's like the screen can pan in a bunch of different directions. Really freaking cool. And I like seeing the crispness of these pixelated creations as well. The animations are incredible, and you could just see the artistic embellishment and these people just loving the ability to play with these different characters that they must have adored for many years. You could just feel it coming off of the screen. The next game is Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter. So we again grow the roster a little bit. We get more of the die-hard Marvel characters, Spider-Man and Hulk and Captain America, fighting against Ryu and Cammy and all of the Street Fighter legends that we know. And then after that, we get into Marvel versus Capcom. We start to get shorthand on what this whole experience is all about. And we grow the roster again, and the speed ramps up a little bit. We start to add embellishment characters and additional characters that can pop in. So we get 2-on-2 matches, and then there's support heroes that can jump in, and the strategy just starts to get a little bit more refined and also bigger and crazier and more comic book-like, you know, which is in keeping. And then, of course, it culminates with this 2D masterpiece of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, where we get 3-on-3 matches plus supporting characters, and it just feels like this two-dimensional recreation of the MCU's Civil War movie, you know, where you just have all of these heroes rushing at each other, and supervillains as well, because you get some weird ones in there. I was actually kind of surprised because I'd never known about Spiral, because I haven't read everything in the Marvel universe. Yeah, I've read lots and lots of comics, but not everything. I didn't know who Spiral was, this six-armed creation that has the ability to transform into a bunch of the different heroes and supervillains. Pretty effective character and pretty fun to fight as and against, you know, because you just don't know what kind of concoction she's going to throw at you. And that's true with a lot of these different creations. When you play as the bigger characters, you can play as a Juggernaut in some of these games, and you can play as the Hulk, of course, and you just see them picking up characters and bashing them back and forth and throwing them around. And then you've got the more lithe, more zippy ones like Spider-Man, which can fly across the screen and spider kick everybody. I like pairing Spider-Man and Venom in Marvel vs. Capcom 1, I believe. I am getting them a little bit confused because there are so many different titles and so many superheroes. But holy crap, this is an incredible collection, and it's fun to have all of these arcade games collected for modern consoles out there. It looks absolutely stunning on the PlayStation 5, and the best part about this is that there's a whole gallery of concept art and all kinds of marquee work as well that kind of explain with graphics some of the fighting moves, and it's just all these promotional elements in there as well. And then I love the pencil sketches and showing how the concept artists were visualizing for the first time how some of these special moves would come together and how these characters that they know and love would be represented on screen. And it's really cool to dig into that. It's also really cool to dig into the music selections that are in this game. Sometimes the music does not really jibe with the world devastation that you're seeing as these heroes are fighting for their lives, and the whole screen is shaking by all of the activity on it, and you've got this sort of jaunty, sort of jazzy music that's playing in the background. but that all sort of fits with the charm and the permanence of it. And man, what a statement for preservation, what a statement that Capcom is making here. And of course, they've got another fighting game collection that's going to have Power Stone games included coming out in 2025. Presumably, at some point down the road, there will be a Marvel vs. Capcom home game collection, which would be pretty cool because there's been a lot of great Marvel work for the consoles over the years as well. And I'd be very excited about that, but I also would be excited for Capcom and Marvel to announce a brand new Marvel vs. Capcom game. But these games are awesome, they're timeless. Yes, they're from a different era. Yes, they are varying degrees of ambition. You can see the growth and the ability of these artists and these developers as they got to spend real time with these characters. They get better as they go along, but every one of them, going right back to the very first fighting game, including Marvel characters, is worth your time. And this collection is a wonderful, wonderful celebration of all of that. I'm going to give Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics a 9 out of 10.